With me today is my old friend Rick Watts. Rick was here not long ago, and we did a little episode of Mike the Baptist where we just kind of had a little front porch talk and talked about him and where he's been, what he's been doing, and where he's going, what he might do, what he's capable of doing, and what he can't do anymore. So it was one of them conversations.
Took about 10 minutes.
It took about 10 minutes. But he's back with me, and he's back with me for a reason. Good to see you back.
It's good to be here with you.
It's actually only been 15 minutes or so since I saw you.
Somewhere in there.
But good to see you back with a new shirt.
There was a nap in between.
Yeah, it's more than 15 minutes. There was a nap or two, a little bit of eating and laying around. But anyway,
visiting.
Good to see you back for this episode.
Good to be back.
Just good to see you in general.
You as well.
And you're back this time for another reason. I wanted to have you talk to all of us about something that crossed your path in your life. And I think it's still crossing your path. I think you might be involved with it still in some certain ways. But we're talking about a time in your life where you were a youth pastor at a church in Harrison, Arkansas, 40 miles up the road from where we both grew up there.
Yep.
And a young man came to that church at one point in time named Brandon Burlsworth.
That's right. He was 11 years old when I met him.
Tell us who Brandon Burlsworth was and how you first came across him.
I took the position there at the church in Harrison, and they didn't have a real vibrant youth program. They had some things that went on there called the Royal Rangers.
Yeah, I remember Royal Rangers.
Yeah. And it was a Christian version of the Boy Scouts.
So what's funny here is that Mike the Baptist grew up in Assembly of God churches. Yeah. So I know all about both worlds.
Rangers, and then the girls had the Missionettes.
Yes.
But they were wanting to do something really modern and progressive at the time. And so they hired a youth and children's pastor.
And that's you.
And that was me.
Okay.
And I had never worked with youth or children.
Okay.
But I had just graduated from Bible college.
Yep.
And I wanted to work with a guy that was a senior pastor. He had a great reputation. And I just wanted to learn from him. And so we started there. I remember on a Wednesday night, he told me, he said, I want you to go in there. He said, these boys are out of control in this Royal Ranger thing. And not only were the boys out of control, the men were out of control. And they were just, I'm not kidding you, boys would come in and they were just running all through the church and up on tables and knocking over chairs. And those guys were sitting there swapping stories about the pocket knives and, hunting and fishing and what they were going to do. I'm talking about the men,
right?
What they were going to do that week. And it's like that didn't bother them. And the pastor told me, he said, I want you to get control of that. It's totally out of control.
So he tasked you with bringing some order to
order into the chaos.
Okay.
And so I remember the first little guy that I confronted, his name was Roy. And Roy was short for his age. He looked like he was 5 and he's about 9, maybe 10.
A short kid named Roy is bound to be trouble.
It was trouble. And he looked just like Dennis the Menace. And this was in January. And so he had his coat on, when he came in. And so he ran over, knocked over a chair and ran right between my legs.
Okay.
So I grabbed Roy by the coat. He had one of those down coats, and he had it zipped up to his chin with that hood. And so I grabbed Roy by the coat and hung him on the coat rack there by the door.
It's appropriate.
And Roy just kept fighting and moving there. And I said, I want order, and I want order now, even louder than that. And I said, I want all of you to line up by size or age from this point, the older ones to the younger ones. And I'm not kidding you, Mike. Not only did the boys do it, but all the men did it.
Oh, that's good. All right.
And Roy's hanging on the
swinging on the back of the door.
Yeah, on the coat rack there beside the door in the foyer.
Okay.
And so that was the beginning.
Okay.
There. And then we broke off into little groups, and I took the teenage boys at that time.
Okay, which is quite a task because I did that once at a church.
It's interesting.
Boy, that's exciting. Just on a Wednesdays evenings I did it, and it was exciting.
That's what this was. And they never had a Wednesday night, with just youth.
Right.
And the girls were real in order and doing great with the missionette program. And so they were in another part of the church, where the boys couldn't.
Right. Exactly.
And so I took those boys, and I think there were 6 of them that first night, from 16 to 11. I found out later because Brandon was a big kid, but he was real good friends with a kid that was about 14.
And how old would he have been? He was 15, 16? How old would he have been right at this point,
At
Brandon?
this point, he was 11.
11.
But he looked like he was 13, 14.
Gotcha, okay.
He's just a big kid.
Okay.
And, but he's just 11, and this friend of his brought him in with him, because anywhere that Ed went, Brandon went.
Okay.
And we'll continue on in the story a little bit later.
Okay.
But, so they came in there. And so I told them, I said, we're going to do things a little bit different. I said, and what we're going to do is we're going to talk about sex for the next 6 weeks. For 4 weeks, we're going to talk about first base, second base, third base, and home run. And I had their attention.
Yeah, sports, of course.
Except for Brandon, who was sitting there just kind of staring at me and drooling down one side of his mouth.
Okay.
He was one of these guys that could focus on stuff that he didn't even understand. He's just that way.
Okay.
It's like a natural thing with him. So anyway, the next week, I think we had 13 boys, They invited some of their friends. By the third week, one of the boys, I think there was 27 boys in that little room. And one of them said, Pastor Rick, I have a prayer request. I said, what is it? He said, you think we ought to start, since we're talking about what we're talking about in marriage and God's way of doing things, I think we ought to start praying that we have a few girls come into this group. And so that's the way we got started.
He picked up on that power of prayer thing.
He did. Somewhere in there, it and that guy's executive now with Feed the Children.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's what happened. Brandon gets a lot of notoriety because what he was and what he became was a fantastic athlete.
Right.
At that time, though, he had no athletic ability. He couldn't walk and chew gum at the same time, but Ed did. And he told me, he said early in his life, he prayed that he would be like Ed. And Ed was one of these perfect young men, great athlete, just a good person, wonderful Christian young man. And that was Brandon's role model.
So did Brandon grow up there in Harrison? So he'd been there. So he was there. This was his church before you showed up.
Right.
Okay.
He and his mom. And he's being raised by his mom.
So he was 11 around your first exposures. And then, so I guess, did you get to, how long were you there? I don't remember how long you were there.
I was there about 5, almost 6 years.
So you were there sometime before he graduated high school.
Yeah. So he was like a sophomore.
So what happened? What happened to him that caused him? Of course, his whole story is about becoming a walk-on for the Razorbacks,
right? And becoming an All-American.
Yeah, I didn't know his whole story until I watched the movie. And the movie,
great.
Hollywood takes some liberties, and you got to kind of look through all that. But it told an interesting story of what kind of person he was. And I always found it interesting that the kind of person he was, he just kept trying till he
focused,
till he got there,
until he got it.
How did he get? I'm assuming, well, naturally he played football, maybe, or did he play football in high school?
Yeah, he did.
Okay,
he did, and the movie takes some liberty there.
Yeah.
By the time he was a junior in high school, he was, all district. They don't show that in the movie. They show like he's just a big old fat clumsy.
Right, just bumbling around.
Right. I've got a picture in my phone of him and I when he was 13, and his body began to change already. And we'd pick up basketball, and he was getting to where he was getting coordinated. But he said it happened in prayer. Mm-hmm. He said he wanted to be like Ed. And he said, what he was saying to God when he prayed that is I want to be a good Christian, disciplined Christian young man. Mm-hmm. But he said somewhere in it, the body began to change too, Right. But the discipline that he had was, Mike, I've never seen anything like it. Mm-hmm.
Well, it's portrayed in the movie pretty good about
and that's good.
Yeah, the
they
way
did a good job with that.
His focus was and all that. So, I guess you kind of, after you left there, did you still keep hearing about him, or was it not until he went to the university there?
I stayed in touch with him. Like Ed went on, and he played at Arkansas Tech, and there was a youth pastorate that opened up in Russellville, and so whenever anything would open up, they'd try to get me to come to wherever they were. Mm-hmm. There's about 50 of these young people that they all have a great story. It's just Brandon's has been more publicized because he was in the forefront.
Well, they made a movie about the guy, so it must be a pretty good story.
It is a good story. But a lot of them have good stories. Ed's story is fantastic. He's an executive now with Federal Express and doing great. Adopted 3 children, the oldest one's named, guess what? Brandon, But it was just a fantastic time in our lives. And the family in the movie, they went through 14 scripts before they had one that they liked. And what was interesting about the movie is the producer of the movie put up his own money, had never produced a movie. He is a walk-on. The director that he hired that ended up hiring, they were Hollywood people that were after the story. And things that they hired also had never directed anything. He'd done some things with PBS. And he was the one that came up with some of the characters, if you remember in the movie, and some of the questions that were going on in the minds. And I thought he just knocked it out of the park. He did a great job. Right. And he was a walk-on also. And we found that all throughout this story of these other walk-on individuals that may be in business, besides football, but maybe in life out here, we all walk on to situations. Right. And if you have the courage, to stay focused and make some goals and go on with it, what can happen. And that's what the story's all about. Big
things can happen, and it did with him. And, I hope he was much like what I saw in the movie, in that it never really affected him, what he was up to and the notoriety he got. He just kept kind of going on,
just kept on doing what he's done.
And one of the really key things about the whole story that I keep coming back to is he wanted to come home on Wednesday night to go to church with his mom.
Yeah, because he did that.
And he really did it. It wasn't just
every weekend that he wasn't on the road with the Razorbacks. He was in church sitting next to his mom.
That's a good story.
Yeah, within itself right there.
We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back and talk about, more about Brandon Burlsworth and his story. We've already left you behind because your involvement at that point kind of dropped out of sight. So we're going to talk about him a little bit.
In a way, but not really.
No, it's coming back. Yeah. We're going to circle back, and when we come back, we'll pick up where we left off.
All right.
We're just Christians trying not to cuss.
Okay.
Ready? Go. Come on, Brandon. We got me on. Get in there. That's my brother. Take it down. What are you doing? Take it down. He is ferocious.
You want to walk on? Head your own way? We certainly won't stop you. There ain't no way you're ever going to play. Not here.
It just might make it. Make it. I just hope he lives. Why are you wasting your time working with that kid?
Well, he wants it more than him. If I can teach my son how to walk, I can teach you these steps. You just got your butt kicked by a walk-on. That's no walk-on. The Lord knows that you've worked harder than anybody else, on and off the field.
You are living proof that when you do the right things, good stuff happens. and you have done everything right.
Of all people, how's that make any sense?
His life meant something. It had to. I've never met a better man than your brother.
He believed that if he worked hard and did everything he was supposed to, God would make everything turn out for the best. Didn't everything turn out for the best, Marty?
Have faith, Marty. This is my road.
How bad do you want it? Real bad! How bad? Real bad! How bad? Real bad! Burlsworth got him!
Brandon Burlsworth has become the greatest walk-on story in the history of college football.
I'm back with my guest, Rick Watts, from my home area of Arkansas, out in the Ozark Mountains, northwest Arkansas. And we're talking about a young man that Rick ran into and was involved with for a while in Harrison, Arkansas, named Brandon Burlsworth, and of whom a movie was made called Greater. And if you haven't seen it, I suggest you look it up. I think you can watch it on Netflix and different places. It's a really good movie, family movie. And it's an interesting story of a young guy that wanted to do something, and it seems like maybe he just didn't take no for an answer, but he was polite about it.
Mm-hmm.
And he did some pretty neat things.
He did.
And that's what we were talking about when we left, is that he went off to the University of Arkansas and became a walk-on for the Razorbacks.
He did.
And pretty well took over, didn't he?
Yeah, pretty much.
Seemed like his personality kind of just...
It did, but, you know, his personality was real subdued. He didn't like to talk much. He just liked to do.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't like to voice it a lot. One of the stories that they tell about him is the improvement that, like, these 4-star guys would see in him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and he was advancing beyond their ability.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just blowing their minds. And they knew that he wasn't using anything to enhance his ability other than work, because he's first guy there, last guy to leave, all the time. He never went out with the guys but one time, and that's depicted in the movie.
Yes, I remember that.
But he, because he was so focused, that also, I think he was the first one in Division I history to graduate with a master's degree before he stopped playing football.
Yeah. Oh.
You know,
it's an oddity.
Yeah, because that's when he did. He was in the room, and so one of the players that played with him, his name was Anthony Lucas, and Anthony Lucas was, you know, Mr. Football receiver. Ended up playing for the Green Bay Packers and all of that. But he was a sweet mate to Brandon, and he asked him, and he's a Christian young man too. Anthony was. He said he thought he was till he met Brandon. Mm-hmm. But he said he was a nominal Christian.
A nominal.
That's the term that he used. You know, it's and basically name only is kind of what it was. But he asked Brandon, he said, Burlsworth, how are you doing all this? You know, how can you be this focused and how can you be this rigid? Mm-hmm. You know, don't you ever get tempted or anything? And Brandon's laying on his bed and he's got his laptop computer there with him, and he reaches up over his head because he was a little OCD. Mm-hmm. Kept everything in places to where he didn't even have to look at it. He knew where it was.
I know exactly how that is.
I thought you probably understand that. Mm-hmm. And he reached up behind him and counted over 3 places and pulled off a book off the shelf, and he pointed it at him, and it was the Bible. Mm-hmm. And then he just looked at him and put the book back. Mm-hmm. And he said, well, can you teach us the Bible? Anthony did. Mm-hmm. And Burlsworth said, no, but, you know, we have a coach that can, because he and this coach had started a Bible study together. He said, I'm not good at Bible. I'm good at lifting weights, you know, and I'm good at studying things, but I'm not a good Bible teacher. Mm-hmm. what he was a Bible liver more than a teacher. And so they started a Bible study. And by the time Brandon graduated, I think about 70% of the team was going to that Bible study.
Well, that's neat.
Yeah, it's pretty neat.
That could be almost called being an example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be kind of what your whole program's about.
Yeah, sort of. In a real way. I mean, he was just living it.
He was just living it.
Just living
Didn't talk about it a lot, just lived it.
So this guy, he not only became a walk-on, became a good player who was advancing and doing really good. He was also still, it looks like, and it seemed like he was still kind of working on the inner him to maintain it.
Constantly.
And as he was growing, getting older, and obviously getting more well-known, it seemed like that he was still staying focused on the inner guy.
That's where his
to not let that guy get out of control.
I can tell you a story. I didn't realize, how much psychological coaching and things that goes on between these teams when they get up into that caliber of playing. The guy across from you, how they study that individual, especially like in bowl games and places where there's big television and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And there was a young man that was a 5-star recruit in Michigan. His name was Sean Lazarus. And Sean was a freshman when Brandon was a senior. And so in the psychology study of being across from Brandon, because Sean wasn't the starter for Michigan because he's a freshman, but he was to come in behind the starter that was there. If he got hurt or if he got winded, on the defensive line, he was to go up against Burlsworth, who was All-American at this time. So they were trying to figure out a way to get in his head. So what they decided his weaknesses was his mama and his God. And so that's all they talked about, was slandering his mama and his God. Well, Lazarus finally got in, so he got his chance. And he made some comment, about his God. And he said, and Lazarus said he was a heathen at the time. He didn't know anything about God or anything, but he just made all kinds of derogatory comments toward him and said the play went off, like the third play that he was out there, and he said he got hit so hard. He saw stars. He never had a hit like that in his life, and said when he kind of come to, there was Brandon standing over him with his hand down, going to help him up. And Brandon said, I guess greater is he that's in me that's in you.
I guess so. Obviously,
yeah. So
obviously there is something to that.
There is something to that. And Lazarus, was a big promoter of this movie. He got us into the Hall of Fame. Brandon has an exhibit at the Hall of Fame, and he never played it down in the NFL.
Well, that brings me to the next thing about him. We're kind of rushing a little bit through his world, but we're getting to what's going on with his world still today. So
23 years later.
So he was recruited by the Colts. I mean, so he was getting enough attention where they came looking for him.
You bet.
And they signed him.
They not only signed him, but he went to the mini camp and they said, you will be starting. And one of his big recruiters was a guy that played at Tennessee that just absolutely loved him, named Peyton Manning.
Heard of Peyton?
Peyton was big, wanting them to get him, to protect him.
Yep.
He wanted him on his team, even to the point that Peyton at the time wasn't married. And he said he offered Brandon to come live with him. And he said, you can keep me out of a lot of trouble. And so he was thinking about it at the time.
Right.
But that, of course, never came about.
Yeah, because, the movie depicts it one way. I don't want to give too much about the movie away in case somebody that might be listening to this has not seen it. You really need to see it. It's just a good story and a good movie. It takes a lot in a movie to impress me. Yeah. I'll just be honest with you. There's been a very small handful of movies that impress me, but if it's got a story that's right, I'm impressed. And I was impressed. You know,
well, and the whole concept that Marty, his brother, and the family came up with this script and things, and the director and things, is kind of what your show's all about. You know, it wasn't some big overt Christian movie.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just kind of
which would have automatically put me on the defensive.
Oh yeah, you would have been.
Yeah, I'm just
you know.
And
I think
I'd be saying that's too overt
exactly,
right there.
Exactly.
So, anyway,
and so
we just hadn't had a buzzer yet.
I'm doing good, aren't I?
You're doing well, but we're talking about somebody else's world, and we're trying to be reverent and polite.
Yeah. So
you'll slip up and get buzzed.
Oh yeah.
At any moment,
and I'll buzz you too.
That's fine. So he was leaving the University of Arkansas pretty much and wrapping it up.
He did that
telling
game,
all his folks goodbye, and then
that game that I was telling you about, the Citrus Bowl, where Tom Brady kind of got his notoriety started. He did a comeback on us and beat us in the last 4 seconds or something there in that game, but also Arkansas won the western side of the SEC, which was a big thing. They hadn't been in the SEC very long, and they won that. And he had gone back to clean out some stuff and to receive his Western Conference championship ring,
right,
for the SEC. But they were having a big banquet and things that Wednesday night, giving those out. You know how they do with that kind of thing.
Which was when he went to church with his mama.
He decided he wanted to go home, be with his mom, because he knew he was going to Indianapolis here pretty soon.
How far out? Do you remember how far it was until?
Yeah, I know the exact spot.
No, I mean how far away from going to Indianapolis he was?
Just weeks.
Within weeks, he was scheduled to be there for camp.
He had already done a mini camp there.
Right.
And he was scheduled to go. They were going back to find him a place to live. That's, and that's when Peyton offered him to live with him.
Okay, so he forewent. Forewent. That's a word.
Okay,
that's almost buzzworthy in a way. But he bypassed
King James.
Probably not. He bypassed. That's not the only Bible there is. I don't know if you're aware of that.
I've heard. I have this thing called YouVersion, has 165 different translations.
I've got every version you can get on my phone.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about on the telephone.
Anyway, so he decided not to take this little award ceremony thing, and instead he wanted to go to church with his mom.
He wanted to do it again because he was getting ready to move to Indianapolis, and that was going to come to an end.
Was this on a Wednesday?
It's on a Wednesday.
So he left the University of Arkansas on his way back to, what's the town he was from there?
Harrison.
Oh. I had Missouri in my head. I knew that. But anyway, so he left.
Traveling on 412.
Yep. He left the university, heading towards Harrison. And what happened then?
We really don't know exactly how it happened. He had a little car. His mama mortgaged everything to, get him a little Subaru car that he could just barely fit into. And the road then was all pretty much 2-lane. And the best that we can tell is he was following a semi, and you know how you'll kind of drift out to look.
Take a peek, yeah.
Yeah, and when he took a peek, another semi got him as he was peeking.
Yeah, so he never made it home. How close was it? Did he live in Lead Hill?
No, he lived in Harrison proper, and he was in Alpena.
Alpena, okay.
Just a little bit north of Alpena.
Gotcha.
There,
I had Lead Hill in my mind for some reason, but it was Alpena.
Yeah.
So Brandon died instantly, obviously, and I can't imagine that. Your family,
well,
and I can't imagine that.
I can't. And the movie does well depicting that, because I've talked to some people that were there. I was in Louisiana at the time on a trip with a tour group that Lanita and I were with, and the bus driver came to my door that morning after it happened, and it was all over the news and things, because he's got quite a bit of notoriety for his glasses they called him Clark Kent, you know, or Drew Carey was real popular and had the horn rimmed glasses.
Right.
The reason Brandon wore those glasses is those are the ones he could afford.
Yeah.
You know, and he thought they'd be durable.
Which is some key information coming up. Yeah. And we hadn't mentioned that yet about him, but he did have those black horn rimmed glasses and made him stand out a little, maybe.
Did. And he didn't do it for that purpose. I mean, they about laughed him off the team when he got them.
Yeah.
Because he didn't even realize he had an eye problem. One of the coaches picked up on it that he was missing.
And then they wound up hating to see him coming out.
Oh, boy. Did they ever. Did they ever. I guess greater's he that's in me, you know.
Here's the question.
Okay.
That everybody asks. And you can't escape the question. It comes up all the time. How is it that God can be such a good, kind, loving God and then allow a boy like that to be killed in a car wreck with so many good things going on? Yeah. How in the
could
world
something happen to somebody so good? You know.
Well, you know what?
His mother answered that really well.
She did, and the answer to that question is still unfolding.
Yeah, it is.
And it's funny how a lot of those things have an answer down the road.
Did you ever hear her answer?
I may have seen her on a YouTube
some kind of interview or
video,
something.
Yep,
where she said that it doesn't. You know, bad things don't happen to good people. She said it doesn't. Said things happen to everybody.
Things do happen to everybody. That's hard to get your head around sometimes. But you know what? Yeah, it's
and basically what she was saying too is nobody's good.
Well, if you want to start getting real,
you know, and that's what the boss said.
Yeah, if you want to get real scriptural,
there's only one good, and that's the Father.
Yes, and you know, I don't know. I think we'll take a quick breather here, just for a second, because we've kind of ramped up through where he was, what he did. The rest of it, if you're listening or if you're watching, just watch the movie. Just watch the movie. It's called Greater, and you get a better picture of the whole thing that we've been talking about here and where his life took him, and all the way to the end of it. It was pretty short.
Yeah, 22
But Brandon Burlsworth lives on, and some of those scriptures you might have read in your Bible over time that said something to the effect of all things work together for the good of those that love him. You know, it seems like there's more to that than just thinking the all things work together for good mean new cars, and houses, and clothing and Starbucks. There's something a lot bigger and better that good means. And when we come back, we're going to talk about that because you're involved in some of that now.
Yep.
I want to talk about what's happened with Brandon's name and his story after Brandon left.
23 years down the road.
23 years down the road. We'll be back in just a bit.
Today, we're talking with a leading expert on radio advertising.
That's me.
Could you please tell our listeners how you got to be a leading expert on radio advertising?
Well, I had this dog.
Dog?
You know, 4 legs, woof, woof.
Of course.
Anyhow, Pumpkin Lips, that's my wife. She coos when I say Pumpkin Lips.
Right. What about the dog?
Oh, no, he goes woof, woof.
Right.
Anyhow, Pumpkin Lips said, Sweet Toes, that's what she calls me. Sweet Toes, you got to sell that dog.
So you bought some radio ads?
Just one.
One?
Well, I just had one dog.
But in radio, you buy several ads, and the repetition sells your product.
Really?
Of course. You can tell your message more times on radio for the same price you could buy one newspaper or other kind of ad.
Hey, that makes sense.
I thought you were an expert on advertising.
Oh, no, I'm an expert on dogs.
But
see that dog over there? That's the one
you didn't sell.
Right, because I just bought one ad.
Exactly.
Well, I'll know better next time.
So how are you an expert on dogs?
Well, I know when they're going to bite.
When's that?
Any second now. Hey, Pumpkin Lips, you want to come help me get this dog off this man's leg?
Knowing how to use radio ads makes your radio ads work. Call FM 104 today, 501-448-5800.
We're back with my guest, Rick Watts. We're talking about the life of Brandon Burlsworth. And up to this point, all the great things were going on. And then one wreck in an automobile ended every bit of that on the spot.
All those dreams, all those possibilities that were there. And right at the time of the fruition of it all.
Yeah. Just right at the peak. Almost peak. He's probably going to peak even more.
I think he'd
gone to the
Colts. But they thought great things. I mean, they had already put him in the starting position.
Well, although Brandon's life ended right there, and I got to think that it ended for him happy because he just seemed like if he's anything like what he's been portrayed, then he seemed to be in a comfortable place in his world and his life, and he seemed. But interesting enough, it didn't stop. His life didn't stop. I'm a firm believer that, and you've heard me say this,
and I like
many times.
I really like what you're about to say. It's been a blessing to me in my life.
I think it's true. I think you and I are sitting here looking at each other. We are not as pretty as we used to be.
No,
and one of us is ahead of the other. But I'm not naming any names.
I know,
but anyway. I'll say it again for the benefit
I try to stay humble
of listeners. It ain't working. The people that you know are not that physical body. You and I sit across here. Someday, if you're gone before me,
thank God,
thank goodness. If you're gone before me someday, you live on in my mind.
Yeah,
you're right there.
Yep.
I can feel you, your presence. To me, that's the people you know.
Yeah.
And at the end of your time, that's really all you own. That's all you've ever really owned.
Yeah.
Is that. You don't own any of the physical stuff, but you do own that.
Well, that's eternal. That's what you take with you.
It's eternal, and you can't help but think all that's linked.
It is.
After we leave here, that same knowing somebody is right there. So.
Well, the book says you'll be known as you're known.
Well, there you go. That's kind of churchy.
Yeah, a little bit, but it's a truthy.
Let's say it different.
Okay.
You'll know people.
Yeah, and what you know and who you know that have stepped over into the place that Brandon has.
Yes.
We'll always have with us, like you're talking about.
Well, they're still alive.
Absolutely, they are. More so than ever. They're more alive than we are.
I think it may be, yeah.
We're still dying.
We are. Hey, listen.
Don't go there.
Yeah. Out of Brandon's life, have come some interesting things.
Yep.
His name lives on, and for good causes. What are the causes that are associated with the name of Brandon Burlsworth?
What came to the family, to Barbara and to Marty and to Vicky, his sister-in-law, was dealing with the shock of all this and the grief of all of it. How can we handle this? And some opportunities came. One of the first things that happened is the University of Arkansas were so impressed with him that they retired his number. There's only been one other that they retired number. And Frank Broyles, who was the head of the athletic department at the time, said we were discussing doing that before the accident.
Right.
I mean, that's how much they thought of him.
And by the way, if you're looking at this on YouTube and not just listening on the podcast, behind Rick there over his shoulder is a Brandon Burlsworth jersey. So,
no.
Anyway, I just want to point that out.
But from that, and they sealed his locker immediately, and it is on display now in $100 million addition to the athletic field and field house of the Razorback. But from that, different companies and organizations like the Colts, they knew that Brandon's heart was in children that were coming up from underprivileged situations, being raised by moms on their own. That's he had a ideas and thoughts of things that he wanted to do for them. So the Colts made it to where there was seats available for kids that could never go to a Colts game. And they have a little spot even today.
Still doing that.
At the stadium for the Burls kids, they call it. And also the Razorbacks have the same thing, you know, for different kids underprivileged all around Arkansas to go to. Because of the glasses and notoriety of that, Walmart stepped up, and some other ophthalmologists all over the state of Arkansas started in Arkansas that said any child that needs glasses, you know, we'll make them available to them. And that's called the Eyes of the Champion. That's a program that came of that. From that, the Burlsworth family decided, hey, why don't we just do a foundation, start doing some good things. And so from that, then there's all kinds of things that they're doing around and things of notoriety that keeps the name going, the Burls way of doing things, all that. And several, you know, sponsors and prominent people, if you want to call them that, have gotten behind ways of scholarships for walk-ons, but also scholarships for those who would not be able to go to the University of Arkansas. There's scholarships available for that. There's scholarships for a football camp that we have called the Burlsworth football camps, and players that played with him have volunteered and never missed a year since his death.
And this goes on every year, the camp.
Every year in June. There's one in Harrison, one in Little Rock, and we're outgrowing them now. We have around 300 participants at each camp, plus the players, and now we're starting to pull Razorback players that are playing, you know, and have played before Brandon and also after. And things that come to it. And a door opened up in the prison system in Arkansas, and they made it to where Marty and I can go into every prison. We were making the circle to be in every prison in the state of Arkansas except Supermax. It was funny the way that started, because they took us to kind of a white collar place to start, and then started working us, you know.
It's the accountant prison.
Yeah. And so we go into all the prisons and share the gospel. We're able to do that there, and they're so interested. So many people are so interested in this story,
right?
And so we made the circuit of every prison in the state, and so through that we decided, why don't we scholarship any prisoner's child that'd like to come to the football camp, boy or girl. And we had 85 this year between the two camps that were prisoners' kids,
right,
that were there. And so lots and lots of good things. I could go on, but you can look up the Brandon Burlsworth Foundation,
and you'll get a good picture of
of all that's going on with that in this life that's living on. And then one of the things that's taken prominent note lately is a trophy, and it's awarded to the most outstanding Division I football player who started their career as a walk-on, and it's for each year. It's for that. And like, you know, there's been some that you have heard of that have won that award, but it's also been placed in the honor of being an award for walk-ons that would be in the same award show as the Heisman, the Doak Walker, you know, all those big trophies, the Home Depot trophy show, the Burlsworth Award, and award winners always featured in it. It's become a big thing.
Does his family, do they still live in Harrison, or
They do in the office. The Burlsworth Foundation is in Barbara's old real estate office.
Oh, okay.
There in Harrison, just off the square.
Okay.
And now I have an office there too.
So do you know what the foundation is aiming at down the road? Or are they aiming at just keeping things moving, or do they have new?
Oh yeah. One of the new things is something that I'm doing.
Okay.
Involved in, it's called character coaching.
Okay.
Brandon's life was such an illustration of the character, and character that so many are looking for. What's really interesting, I mentioned some of these companies and things. some of these guys, like one of the ones that was awarded this year at the Legends Banquet, it's called, is a guy named Gary George, and he owns a big chicken operation in Arkansas called George's Chicken.
That don't mean like one big chicken. That means a large company.
Yeah,
operation.
It's a big company.
I just wanted to clarify.
It's a big company,
Gotcha.
and he was someone that we featured this year as a legend, and it's a money raising thing. But also, I've gotten to know several of these folks that have large companies and things, and the thing that they're saying is, we're looking for somebody that'll show up early in the morning and stay as long as it takes to get the job done. You know, that used to be an American trait. That used to be, but it's few and far between now. And when they find people that work like that, they're so thrilled, and they end up climbing the ladder very quickly.
Right.
In these companies and things. And so they're wanting to send us out into the high schools and into the junior high schools and even into the elementary schools and into the colleges, you know, to teach people basics of character and to be character coaches. And so that's something that the foundation will continue on with.
Right.
And we're going to be, and I'm kind of a face for that, going into communities in Arkansas to start, and going to a program that we have there called the Character Award Winners. And that's a former person that was on a football team or a team that may not have been the most outstanding athlete, but he was the guy or the girl that got there early and stayed late, had the character.
Yeah.
And so from them, I'm looking first of all, and then on their recommendations for people in communities that would do what I do, going into these schools and being a mentor to young people and to teach them these basic things. And so that's a door that's opened up that's just amazing right now. And that's one of the things of the future. Also, you know, like I mentioned, the trophy and those kind of things, and the money that's raised for the underprivileged kids out there for scholarships and glasses, and you can read all about those things. Will continue also. Yeah,
I would encourage people to go to the website and read up a little bit about the guy, and I think there's some info there about his family and about the things that they're involved in. It's just a great story. It's tragic, but it's great, and it's a very good example of how when you think your life is not doing anything, that you're usually not aware. You're not aware of what may be happening all around you that's working to good things, and that's what happened with this fellow right here.
Yeah,
and it's still happening, and it's a great story.
And there's a lot of these stories going on today, Mike. You know, they're just not being told.
There are a lot of them, and it's sad because we kind of live in a world nowadays where the sensational takes over, and sometimes the sensational is exciting, usually for a minute, and it's, you know, it titillates your mind and kind of stirs you up for a minute, but then there's no meat to some of that. But a story like this, about a story like Brandon Burlsworth, it's almost like the Andy Griffith Show. The reason people still sit down and watch the Andy Griffith Show is there's something in that show that gives you a reason to have some faith in humanity, that there's good, and good can work, and that's what this story is.
It works well, you know, determination, discipline, consistency,
and just being a good human,
integrity,
just being a good
honesty.
Human. I mean,
is very, very successful formula.
This is a little off of the Brandon topic, but I got to get this off my mind. I don't understand a culture or a society that works so hard to make people, in this case I'm talking about Christian people, I don't understand a society that works so hard to try to make people like that look bad, feel bad, and stop them from what they're up to, because those people, all they're up to is trying to be a good human themselves, share the goodness with other humans, and help other humans discover that.
Yeah.
To this day, well, I do understand there's other forces working that keep people from wanting to applaud that and see that, but I don't understand. It's like a gambler. If you tell me you're a professional gambler, but you won't give your life to Christ, you're a horrible gambler.
Yeah.
Because in my estimation, there's a 50-50 chance right there that you could be wrong.
Least.
And if you're wrong, that's a pretty bad gamble.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, back on topic. I'm sorry.
No, that is topic.
Ramble over. This was a good guy, a good story, and good things came of his life.
And still are coming.
And his family, I know they are, but I'm going to say, too, that they should be quite proud.
They are. They're very, very thankful.
And they should also be a little ticked off.
Really?
Yes. Because, well, he was such a good guy that if you run into one of them now, you got to say, are they as good as he was? I mean, it just puts some pressure on you. It puts pressure on me.
It does.
To think about that guy. But in all sincerity, it's a great story, a great guy. You should go watch the movie. It's a good movie. And then, you know, if you want to get in touch with that foundation, foundations like that can always use a little help. Or at least a little encouragement to make them know that, you know.
Because they work so hard. And it's been basically the three of them. You know, I came in a few years back when I ended up back in Arkansas, and Barbara wanted me to kind of come in and help on the spiritual side of the foundation, you know, and like going into the prison and that sort of thing. That was so funny. How that all came about is Marty said, looks to me like, you know, we need to go into the prisons because the book says that's where he hangs out, you know, is go in there and visit me there.
Yeah.
And he said that to me like on a Wednesday, I think it was, and on Monday, there was a correction officer from Calico Rock, of all places, called me, found me. Little
town in Arkansas where they have a prison over there. Yep.
And it's kind of a white collar type place compared to some of these others. But anyway, she said, look, we've been watching the movie had come out, and these guys have gone wonderfully in the right direction just from the movie. Is there any way you guys could come out?
Good.
From Wednesday to Monday.
Good.
And so we did that. Then it went through the whole Arkansas Department of Corrections, and that's how we were going to all of them.
Neat.
You know.
Coincidence.
Yeah. It's one of those
all that stuff's coincidence.
Yeah.
Hey, look, we're going to take a little break.
Okay.
Then we're going to come back. We're going to have a little fun.
Are we?
Yes, because it's time for Innie or Outie.
Okay.
We're going to take a little break from
looking so forward,
being real serious, and we're going to romp through that. And then I've got an important question to ask you.
Okay.
And then we'll come back a little later and sing a hymn in the old tradition of the church, and we'll end it out. And pass on when you see the members of the Burlsworth clan.
Yeah.
You brought me a few caps. I love a good cap. This is a good cap. It's got Brandon's 77 on there and a pair of his glasses.
This is one that staff wears.
Yeah,
and I've worn it out so much that the little button on the top's gone. And
for those of you who just listen to the podcast, he's holding up a cap.
Yeah. And
I'm pointing at one on my head.
One. Yeah, this is another one.
But yeah, pass on my thanks to them for that. Well, and if I understood you correctly, that jersey back there is mine.
It is?
Yeah, I understood you correctly on that. I appreciate the stuff. But more important, I appreciate you sharing the story of him and being willing to talk about him. And what a great story.
It is. It is. And there's so much more.
Yeah.
You can't do it in an hour.
You can't. I just want to give people
and Hollywood couldn't do it, 2 hours for 22 years. You just can't do it.
Yeah.
But they did pretty good. I'm pretty proud of them.
We'll be back in a couple of minutes. We're just Christians trying not to cuss.
Pretty easy when you talk about a guy like him.
Yeah.
Don't have to cuss. Nope.
Hey everybody, it's time to play America's almost favoriteest new game show, Any or Outie, where we challenge our guests to figure out if a phrase we give them is actually in the Bible or out of the Bible. Sharpen your wits, guest. You're about to be in the hot seat of Bible stuff, because you're the next contestant on Any or Outie. Here's Mike.
What a great planet. It's such a great planet to be able to sit and have fun conversations and talk about important stuff in really casual, ordinary person's ways, and then to get to this point for the Any and Outie competition. It's not a competition. Nobody wins or loses. Everybody wins. We don't even keep score. And anyway, it's just let's just have a little fun. And
I could really go off on that, but
you could, but you're not going to, because I'm going to shut it off.
It's your show.
That's right. If you go the wrong direction on me here, I'm shutting her down.
That's right.
Yeah, I got. Yep.
Okay.
So here's how it works, folks. For those of you who are not seen Any and Outie here yet, I'm going to present our guest Rick with a series. In this case, I have four items here. It's a series of either scriptures or phrases that are used in conversation nowadays that may sound like they came from the Bible, but they may not have. So it's either going to be a phrase that sounds like it could have came from there and either did or didn't.
Okay.
Or it could be an actual scripture that is not worded exactly right or is. So if it's in the Bible, it's an Any. If it's not in the Bible, it's an Outie. It's Any or Outie.
Gotcha.
Number one. Here we are.
All right, here we go.
I've honed in on the book of Ecclesiastes. I love the book of Ecclesiastes. I read it regularly because it just puts everything right back into a good perspective. I love the book.
Yeah.
So I have
vanity.
Yes, I have
a time for this and a time for that.
There's a sink for this and a sink for that. Vanity.
Yeah.
That's bad humor right there. So
anyway,
I'm going to focus on Ecclesiastes 10:10. Is this an Any or an Outie? If the axe is dull and one does not sharpen its edge, then one must stop cutting firewood. Okay, Rick, now don't rush into your answer. I want you to take your time and talk it out, because the suspenseful music that I'm going to edit in underneath your talk is going to make this really seem drastic and important. Is that an Any or an Outie?
So if it has lost its edge.
Yes. And one does not sharpen its edge.
And one does not sharpen its edge.
Then one must stop cutting firewood. Okay, now this is going to be tough for you, and I know it's a struggle. So I want you to really think hard. Is that an Any or an Outie?
I would say that's an Outie.
He would say that's an Outie. He's right.
All right.
Yeah, you're correct. That is an Outie. The correct phrase is one must exert more strength. Yeah. So that's quite a bit different than just stop cutting the firewood. Because I was going to say stop cutting the firewood, but you would have automatically known.
Yeah.
Because your King James version would say cutting.
Yeah.
Cutting the firewood.
It would.
The with two E's. Cutting the firewood.
It would. It's got a lot of these in it.
Yeah, that was too much fun. Okay, so you're 1 for 1.
All right.
Here's number 2. This is honing in on Ecclesiastes 10 and the verse 19. Now, this is getting pretty specific. This is not like me.
All right.
A feast is prepared for laughter, and wine makes life happy. Cue the suspenseful music. Now, think this through. Talk it out if you must.
All right.
You want me to read it again?
Yeah, slowly.
A feast
A little faster than
is
that.
prepared for laughter.
Yeah.
And wine makes life happy. Now, this is right out of the book of Ecclesiastes. Is this an Any or an Outie? Is that the way it's written, or?
I believe that's an Any.
You think that's an Any?
Mm-hmm. I do.
Let's check with the judges. Oh, there are no judges. It's just me. That's correct. That's an Any. That is exactly what it says.
All right.
We are not going into whether or not you should drink wine on this program. You figure it out yourself.
Come on, Mike.
Nope, you figure it out yourself. I'm not in that one.
All right, gotcha.
That's between you and other people.
There you go.
look at your bylaws. I'm sorry. I couldn't resist that. Here we go. Number 3.
Okay.
Ecclesiastes 1:17. This is early in the book, so you may remember this. You know,
I might.
You remember the things right off the bat, and then you kind of drift off later. But Ecclesiastes 1:17. I applied my mind to know wisdom and knowledge, madness and folly. I learned that this too is a pursuit of the rich. Now, is this an innie or an outie? Do you need to think about it? Do you need to talk it through? Yes. Boy, this is close now. This may or may not have some trickery involved.
I think there's a little trickery in that.
Yes, I think I have spoken too much there.
Yeah,
not a good poker hand right there.
I was kind of thinking that way anyway. So I'm gonna have to say outie.
I'm just going to give it to you. Yes, that's correct. That's an outie because it does not say this is a pursuit of the rich. No. It says this is a pursuit of the wind.
Yeah.
Couldn't read that writing. Who wrote that? Me. Yeah. Okay. Hey, you've done really good. You're 3 for 3.
3 for 3. Done okay this time.
And and you didn't have a lot of help. You should be encouraged, Rick.
Okay, thanks.
Here's our last innie and outie. Now this is it's not going to be a full scripture.
Okay.
Now if you'll notice, I've done something clever here. I've set you up with 3 fully worded scriptures.
Gotcha.
So there was lots of places for. But now we come down to those things that people say that sound like
it should be or could be.
Yeah, but you're not sure. It may just be something some dude said on the back of a camel riding through a hot, sandy night somewhere one time.
Okay.
To each his own. Take your time, talk it out. That's the last one. This is an important one.
That's an outie.
No. Take your time.
Okay.
To each
his own.
His own. And now all these that I've been talking about have come from the book of Ecclesiastes. Remember, Solomon, great wise guy.
Gotcha.
But you're saying?
Outie.
You're right. It's an outie. I don't know where to each his own came from. Probably Shakespeare or something.
Yeah,
or something like that. Irregardless, that's an outie. That's not in the Bible. But you know, there are a lot of those little phrases.
I had a preacher one time standing in the pulpit, a friend of mine, that said, it says in the Word of God, we have nothing to fear.
But fear itself. Yes.
And we've all experienced somebody doing that. Or something like it.
But there was a comma right after that.
Yeah.
And he said, and the buck stops here. That's in scripture.
Yeah.
That's in there somewhere.
Has to be. Yeah.
Hey, listen, that was fun. So.
It was. Thanks. I enjoyed it. I don't win anything.
Oh, yeah, but I haven't printed.
I brought you all kinds of stuff.
Well, I'm printing you some coffee mugs if the show lasts long enough to actually print them. I don't want to print a bunch of mugs.
Okay.
And then they're just sitting on somebody's shelf saying, that guy had a show and it didn't make it. So give me a few weeks here.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, wow. What a great contestant and a fine sport today on Innie or Outie, America's almost favorite new game show. Study up, future guest people. You're next in the hot seat for Innie or Outie.
Hey, I'm back. Before we go to our final break of the event here and then come back, I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay.
If you had, if you felt like God had put a message inside of you that maybe he only shared with you, but intended for you to give that to somebody else as an encouragement or as just a thought, or you know what I'm saying? If he gave something like that to you and you're carrying it around inside of you and it kind of helps direct what you're up to in your world, and you only had like a sentence or two to put that in, what would you say right here? What's your driving message inside of Rick Watts to anybody else?
Can I tell you the one that Brandon always quoted that came out of Rick Watts to Brandon?
Is it yours?
Mm-hmm. It was one that he quoted.
It's
in the movie.
You can.
Okay. Somebody's always watching.
We'll be back in a bit. We're just Christians.
Try not to cuss.
This land is your land. Slap some bacon on a biscuit and let's go. We're burning daylight. This land was made for you and me.
If you like a little meat with your vegetables, then you might like our sister podcast, Our Land with Michael Jackson. It's a podcast for freedom-loving, liberty-chasing, common-sensed Christian Americans who still believe that good can and will prevail in the struggle to survive in today's crazy society. It's a little bit politics, a little bit social commentary, and a whole lot not woke. Just search for Our Land with Michael Jackson on your favorite podcast app, or you can subscribe to get the podcast and read our posts at ourland.substack.com. Our Land is a member of Our Land Media Group, the America in the Middle.
This land was made for you and me.
We're back.
Okay.
Well, this has been fun. Old friend Rick.
I really enjoyed it.
Yep. Traveled 8 hours to be here live with me in studio.
That's all right.
Get rid of that.
Yeah.
Traveled 8 hours to be live in studio with me here rather than Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
Which Zoom works, but it's so impersonal.
Yeah.
It's like talking to a screen.
Kinda. Because you do.
Because you are.
Exactly.
Hey, look, Rick, you know me. You've known me most of your life. I've known you most of mine. And you know me. I'm a by-the-book kind of person. I just will not have it any other way because the world is chaotic enough without somebody trying to disrupt it.
Yeah, really.
So as is the...
and sarcasm reigns.
Boy. Boy, is that an innie or an outie.
Yeah, you bet.
So in fine church tradition, not to upset the natural order of church services.
Churchianity.
Yep, and don't. Someday I'm going to print a bulletin for each show.
Oh, that'd be good.
Well, yeah, because something feels like it's missing already if you don't have a bulletin.
I don't know. When you start talking about churchianity, well, mouse goes to the side, and I think of Dana Harvey and the church lady.
Yeah, let's not start with that.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Because that will lead to Christmas Vacation and Cousin Eddie.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Anyway, that's another story. But
I
hey,
know
look,
that guy too.
In church fashion, we're going to close out the program with a hymn.
Oh, okay.
And I have, if you have your Mike the Baptist hymnal at home, you can turn to page 76. 76 or 78. Might have been page 77. Just look in there somewhere and you'll find this hymn. I've printed it out for my guests so they don't have to open the book
77 always seems to come up when we talk about this.
Oh, how ironic is that? Coincidence.
Yeah, another one of those coincidence thing.
We're going to sing a hymn. We don't have a studio audience for this one. Everybody bailed out on us. The weak folks bailed and only left Rick and I, who are padded with much Cracker Barrel food, chocolate cake.
You bet.
And
by the way, Lanita said that was the bomb.
That's a really good cake. Alicia makes a really good chocolate cake.
She was very happy girl.
I'll be getting some of that here in just a little bit.
There you go.
So we're going to sing this hymn. We're going to wrap it up, and then we're going to move on with our world. And if you're out there and you want to join in, you'll recognize this from its classic old hymnal or hymn. You'll recognize it. You've got a cute way of talking. You've got the better of me. Just snap your fingers and I'm walking like a dog hanging on your leash. I'm in a spin, you know, shaking on a string, you know. You make me feel like dancing. I'm gonna dance the night away. You make me feel like dancing. I'm gonna dance the night away. You make me feel like dancing. I feel like dancing, dancing, dancing the night away. I feel like dancing, dancing. Ah! Well,
dates us, don't it?
Thanks, Rick. Drive safe going home.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm coming to see you when gas prices go down.
There you go. Well, maybe a couple more years.
See you next time. We're
All
just
right.
Christians trying not to cuss.
There you go.
Mike the Baptist.